Hi, Mark here from the Tangibound Podcast Network and host of the flagship show, the Tangibound Podcast. Did you know that we over at Tangibound are always looking for amazing podcasts to promote? And did you also know that we are also proud nerds and geeks of everything from movies, music, gaming, TV shows, and comic books to wrestling, MMA, soccer, and football? Whatever you can nerd or geek out about, we've got it. And if you're interested, we can help you find it. And if you're a show looking for a place to call home, we've got you covered. Side effects may include upset stomach, dizziness, tumors, shakes, and in some rare cases, death from excessive laughter. Though to be fair, it's only sometimes. Other side effects may include diarrhea, gallstones, heart palpitations, and strong desire for cookies on the dark side. Talk to your doctor and visit TangiboundNetwork.com and see if Tangibound Network is right for you.
Sucks to the last drop. Are you gonna blow your head off? Take good aim and don't forget to duck. Life sucks every Monday and all the way to Sunday, but I wouldn't have it any other way. I don't care how you're doing, what's up or how's it hanging. I'd like to buy this world one last drink. Life sucks all of the time. Stick it up your sunshine, and then you'll see the clouds every day. And then you'll see the clouds every day. And then you'll see the clouds every day.
We're not doctors, therapists, trained professionals of any kind, so if you feel you do need help, please reach out and get the help you need. We have a whole list of things on our files page over on Facebook at facebook.com/crazylifepodcast, and or just search on the internet for the suicide prevention hotline number, or go to NAMI.org or whatever resource you can find. But just please reach out for help if you need it. If you feel as though you're going to harm yourself or others, definitely reach out. And try not to be alone. Also, if you feel that way and you realize that you're writing a note or making plans of how you would do, like harm yourself or others, definitely reach out. That's a huge red flag. And lastly, please do not replace the idea of therapy with listening to this show. Again, if you need help, please reach out and get the help that you need, or contact us. We can try to help you find the help that you need.
Welcome to Crazy Life, everyone. My name's Jen. I am your hostess for the evening, and with me are my co-hosts Brian and Henno. Hey, guys.
Howdy.
Hi.
Sure about that one, Brian.
I'm the tentative guy tonight.
Maybe I'm here.
It is what I'm known for.
There you go. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So how are you guys doing?
Bueno.
You know, I'm here.
Present. I abstain.
Mm-hmm.
So full of excitement tonight.
Yep.
We are. Well, you know why we are? We're just actually just kind of loose and chilling and laying low because you got to kick this thing off.
Yep.
Yes.
That's why we're just totally mellow, because we're like, yeah, you know, we're in the box. We're, you know.
Yeah. Well, also, Henno and I just recorded on Friday, so we already kind of know how each other are.
Yeah, we do. Yeah. And like usual, like there was the pre-recording and the post-recording. Actually, there wasn't much post-recording because by that time it was like 1:30 in the morning for me, and I hadn't eaten since whenever.
Right.
This is the special episode of like the Salty Language Kickoff, right, or something like that, or
just
no, or was it the Crazy?
We just did a regular. I just sat in for Tony this week.
Yeah.
That's what it was. I knew there was something going on.
Yep.
My bad.
Yep. The episode will be up around the time you can download this one if you'd like to. The episode is titled Competent Board Work.
Competent board work.
Mm-hmm.
Competent board work. Wow, I was on the show and can't even remember what that reference is. This is good.
Guess people just have to listen and find out, eh?
Yeah, I guess I'll have to listen and find out.
Cheap free download.
Hey, unlike that Tony guy,
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Yep.
or Jen,
Yeah.
I know.
because we know you don't listen either.
Yep.
I'm bad.
Which it's I'm just surprised at what we get away with talking about you.
It is
Yeah,
surprising. Yeah.
I'm sure. That's Hanno's way of trying to hit into my my FOMO.
Yeah, you know what? If we were just posted on notifications to your cell phone, recording without Jen tonight. So
That's smart, Henno. Maybe we should start doing that.
I know. We might actually get her to show up. So I just looked at my recording time for when we recorded. I think it says 4 hours.
Sounds right. The episode itself's about 2.5.
Nice.
Yeah, it was a pretty long episode. We covered a lot of stuff, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I anxiously awaiting, possibly listening at some point.
you won't. Don't lie.
I know. I'm so far behind on my podcast
Sure,
listening.
sure.
It's see.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I know. Brian's just shaking his head at me, folks. He's given up all hope.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, I guess since I gotta go first.
Mm-hmm.
Well, first of all, the reason I wasn't on last week, folks, and I apologize, but I ended up having to switch work schedules with someone, so I had to work Monday and Tuesday of last week. It was interesting because I normally work nothing but nights, and last week I actually worked a day shift, so I worked Friday during the day, which is a whole different feel. So those of you who've ever done nights and then done days is a very different feel than nights.
Mm-hmm.
So it was really interesting to have that experience. I like it. I would say, see, it's tough because there's 3 different shifts. There's A, B, and C. I'm normally B, that does nothing but nights. C is 2 nights and 2 days. The nice part about C is you'd have Friday and Saturday nights off. So, which would help because recently I've been really struggling with FOMO, I guess, is more than anything, is the fear of missing out. It's also the lack of socialization. I'm so isolated between just work and home, and with me not working nights, I can't go out at night. Even if I didn't have plans, or I'm tripping over my words here a little bit, but it's one of those things that the opportunity to go out is gone, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like I have plans and I'm missing out on them all the time, because I don't. It's just the opportunity to go out with friends or to do something in the evening. I don't have those opportunities anymore because I'm always working. So if I went to a shift like the C shift, I at least have my weekend nights free so that I could, if I wanted to, I could go out and do something.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it would be nice, and it's kind of, I have put my request in. Someone would have to come off the C shift for me to get on the C shift, so it's not going to happen anytime soon. But that is something that I've been considering and pursuing that might be able to help with that. And we just talked about it before the podcast, because I'm feeling kind of isolated and not having that socialization that I want, that social time that I need, because I am a very social person in a lot of ways. I've been substituting with Twitter a lot. So
that emphasis is for good reason.
Yeah. So let's just say Twitter is my other full-time job. So I'm not exactly proud of that fact. I am proud of the fact that I do have some really great friendships and stuff that I formed on Twitter. And I'm really proud of the fact that I've had these great discussions and great conversations. But there might be an opportunity for me to kind of push back on some of the extra stuff that I've been doing on Twitter and the scrolling nonstop for hours on end, and that stuff probably could be curtailed and cut back on.
Right. Which, oddly enough, FOMO and the social media / phone time are both topics we've talked about previously on the show. So
yes, I know.
No, I'm just saying for anyone listening, those episodes are back there if someone wants to go listen to us talk about those.
Absolutely. But it's supposed to say, that, yes, as people have noticed probably on this show, sometimes it's easier to do as I say, not as I do.
Wouldn't know anything about what you're talking about.
Nope,
no, not at all. So so a lot of the stuff we talk about is not just for you; it's also for us.
Oh, come on, be honest. It's really all about us.
It is.
I mean, we truly are egomaniacs with inferiority complexes.
The Animaniacs theme song just popped in my head.
That's pretty accurate too. I mean,
exactly.
There's we are zany to the max, and there is baloney in our slacks.
Does Jen have a secret? We need to. No, never mind. Wrong podcast.
No, Henno, like the lunch meat.
Oh,
yeah,
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Probably. Well, but yet, once again, does she have some weird fetish that we need? Oh, sorry, wrong
podcast. Yeah. Unless we start talking about fetishes on this podcast. So.
I'm still pushing for that.
Yep.
It's like the sub pod.
Sub pod. No, so I ended up having my Friday and Saturday nights free this week, which was cool. Friday night, I didn't do much, but Saturday night, I went out with some friends, which was really awesome. First time I've been out with friends on a Saturday night in months. So I really haven't had that opportunity. So that was a lot of fun. Just kind of sitting back, relaxing, having a few drinks, having a meal that I didn't cook, which was nice, and just being out with people that I feel comfortable with. And it was amazing because I could tell some of my social skills have been waning because I haven't been being used very often. So it was kind of interesting to kind of note that about myself. And I'm like, okay. So, but other than that, so work, a little bit of play, a lot of Twitter. Trying to think what else is going on.
Really quick, let's be fair about the Twitter thing though, is that, there is sometimes where, like you were saying, like if you are at a point that, you're working a lot of hours and you just are too tired to go do whatever else, using Twitter as an outlet is not a bad thing, much like anything else, moderation, but using it, like I always said, I got on Twitter to get, for the nights when I was having intrusive thoughts or when, I was having real struggles with depression, because I knew at any time that I log onto Twitter, there's someone I can talk with. Or there's always jokes to be found or whatever, so there's definitely good uses for the app, so
absolutely.
Even though we're kind of dunking on it, but at the same time, there is plenty of good sides to it.
And I've met some really amazing people and I've made some really good friends. I mean, one, including my co-host on my other podcast that I've been doing, Shake the Sheets, for those who didn't know. Nate and I met via Twitter. So, which was really cool. And we became friends through there, and that's how the pod was formed, was based off of, loosely based off of Twitter. So a lot of good things and a lot of positive things have come from it. But But, you said everything in moderation, and those fans of the show have known moderation has never been my strongest suit. I have a tendency of going all in or nothing on decisions and everything that I make. So, kind of a place to work on my moderation. But
yeah.
So that's kind of what I've been up to and what's been going on. Who wants to go next?
I'll go next.
Cricket.
Ha! I jumped in before the crickets.
Brian's like, ha ha! Conquer this mountain.
Yeah.
Did you get that movie reference? Anyone?
No.
Okay.
Probably should, but no. I don't recall movies well anymore. Yeah. I don't know what happened. Probably too many times getting hit in the head.
Yeah, that'll happen.
Yeah. What movie was it?
Labyrinth.
Oh, well, okay, I have a different reason for that then. It's probably because I haven't seen Labyrinth since I was a child, pretty much. So.
Good.
That's been a couple years ago. I don't just mean mentally, I mean actually a child.
Yeah.
Otherwise it'd be like yesterday, today, whatever. Let me try and think here. Well, I guess it's funny because like with Heno and I just recording the other night, on one hand I'm kind of like, do I want to and it's like, oh wait, different podcast. Yeah, so. Yeah.
Pretend like I'm not here and you're just talking to Jen.
Right. Mm-hmm. So, I mentioned on last week's show that, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired about, just my financial situation. And I've been trying to put myself into a place of action. And the way I've been trying to put myself into a place of action over the last year has been anytime there's something I want to do, I try to remove potential, excuses. Because, the less excuses there are around me, the less there is to grab onto, there's less legs to hide behind, and, so I realize I need to file bankruptcy in hopes that will allow me to kind of get back to even. And, I told Heno this on Salty Language, it's funny. I think about, there's various stuff I've collected over the years, and, I'm sitting here going, I need to do something. And then finally it's like, you know what? I've got a lot of stuff I've collected, and it's like, it's sitting over in my storage, or it's sitting in a drawer over here, or it's just sitting. It's not on the walls. It's not on display. It's not doing anything where I can enjoy it. And so first of all, how badly do I need it? Second of all, well, if I can sell it and it can bring me peace of mind, that seems worth it. Third of all, I remember, as I told Heno, I remember when he was talking about selling some of his musical equipment to try to get himself back onto even footing, with the thought of, well, if I want it again down the road, then I'll worry about that then, maybe buy it again or whatever. And also I remember, like 1,000 years ago watching, one of those, oh God, I can't remember which one it was. Essentially it was like a hoarding show, Jen, like where they would help people clean clutter out of their house. But it wasn't like hoarders. It was just one of those like TLC ones that you used to watch.
Oh yes, I know what you're talking about.
And I remember the one guy saying, if you haven't touched it in 6 months, why do you still have it, basically? And that kind of jumped in my head. Clean sweep? Something like that?
Yes,
yeah, okay. It was something along those lines, if it wasn't that one. But it's the same idea. Huh?
Niecy Nash was the host.
Yes, that one. And I just remember that guy saying, like I said, if you haven't touched it in 6 months, how much do you love it? How much do you still need it, basically? Meaning that if it's in a box somewhere. You know, like if it's out on your table or something, that's a little different because you can walk by and look at it and enjoy it. It's a centerpiece, whatever. But like I said, I told Henno there was a poster that I was going to get out because I was going to sell. And in the same drawer that's in, I found 2 or 3 other things that I was like, oh, I still have these. Like totally forgot I had, you know, I thought I had already sold them, you know, so it's like, how much do those mean to me that I forgot about having them, you know? So it's time to get rid of that stuff. 'Cause again, it's something I can worry about down the road if I really want to get it again. You know, eBay exists. I can always find it again down the road, you know. And I think I can make a good dent in what I'll need to do that. And in the end, if that, like I said, even if in the end I walk out just even, that's significant progress, you know. Mm-hmm. So, and I've even started looking a little forward past that at the things that I've wanted to do that I haven't been able to do, like fix my computer and different other things that are, you know, that not having money has stopped me from doing. Like I told him, I'm not talking like, you know, ooh, I want to go buy 1,000 Funko Pops. It's, you know, the things that, like I said, fix my computer. I need a new pair of tennis shoes, you know, cause like I'd like to work out, but the shoes I have are not great for that. You know, I've done a little bit like on an exercise bike and they're really uncomfortable on an exercise bike. You know, like I just need a better pair of sneakers for that, you know, like just dumb stuff like that. Yeah. You know, little things though, that I want to get to where those aren't as much of a concern. And again, the ultimate goal is potentially, you know, getting back, as I've said before, getting back into the workforce and whatever. So, but all moving that way. You know, and a big win for me, I think for the week is I went to the dentist and I had a small crack on one of my teeth that I thought was going to be a no big deal kind of, you know, just get a quick filling. Everybody's happy. And then the dentist was like, oh, you need a crown.
Oh.
And I go, okay. And she goes, your insurance doesn't cover crowns. And I go, oh. And then she goes, well, we have a discount program. And then I look at the paperwork and there's a good chance I'm not going to qualify for their discount because of some of the terms of it. Like I live with my mom. They're going to probably say my mom makes too much money. Even though they don't take into account what money goes out. All they look at basically is what comes in, which is the dumbest thing. But whatever. Anyway. Like I told Henno when I texted him that day and I'm like, oh, of course I have to have a crown, but you know, and it was funny because right after I sent that text to him, to you, Henno, I mean, I don't want to seem like I'm talking past you. Although you did tell me to, you said pretend like I'm not here.
I did pretend like I'm not even here.
But it was funny after I sent that text and I read it and I was like, what are you doing? Because I immediately caught myself catastrophizing it.
Yeah.
You know, or worst case scenarioing it. You know what I mean? Like, of course the world is unfair to me. Although at the same time, I was kind of like, you know, I gave myself that minute that it was a little bit like I threw a quick tantrum because it really was. It's like, I'm already trying to figure out how to get myself out of a hole I'm in. And now, you know, somebody was like, hey, you know what you need to help? More dirt. You know?
Right.
So whatever. It's just, but that's all it was. It was just that moment. And then I was like, okay, well, let's fill this paperwork out. Let's get what I need. And, you know, tomorrow I'm going to go drop the paperwork off and we'll see what happens. And then I'll figure it out from there. Cause you know, if I can't qualify for that, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'll probably just see if they'll pull it or I'll just, you know, wait until it breaks and then I'll, you know, just start letting all my other teeth break and, you know, start talking like an old man and start whittling on a porch or something, you know, whatever.
The options.
Yeah.
You know.
No, I don't know. I'll have to talk to him to see if there's any other option. But, I've always kind of known it was leading this way anyway, cause it's a tooth that a long time ago, I had a pretty bad, break in it from, there was a crack in it I didn't know about for a long time. because it didn't hurt. And because that crack was there, it allowed decay. So when I finally got it, when I went back to the dentist, he was like, "Ooh, we got a problem here." And at the time, he's like, "Well, let's try filling it." He's like, "If not, we may have to go root canal, blah, blah, blah." And I'm like, cause, I didn't have insurance at the time. So filling was the right way to go. But the filling held, and he was like, "Okay, everything seems good." And it held for a very long time. I mean, I'm talking probably 20 years ago almost. It held for a long time. And at the time, he thought we were going to end up pulling the tooth. Like, he really did. So I got 20 years out of a tooth that he didn't think he was going to be able to save. So I always kind of knew there was a good chance this was going to happen. Just still sucks that it did.
It does suck.
Yeah. But like I said, my big win for the week was I didn't obsess on it. I didn't hang up on it from that point because really I was just like, there's nothing I can do. I mean, there literally is zero I can do about it. All I can do is go, well, right now the only option is apply for that discount, and then I'll look at my options from there, and we'll just see. And again, it reminds me, like, Heno talking about how different I sound now versus when we started doing this, and Jeannie said the same thing to me, about I just sound different because my thinking is just different, and we'll take that,
Absolutely. It's very apparent that anyone who's been listening to the podcast, I'm sure, feels the same way. It's very apparent that you've made such strides in how you're thinking about things and how you're choosing to go about things.
Yeah.
It's just, you've put the work in, and it shows.
Yeah. And, I've had a couple other things happen this week, but I'm, that have been just kind of trying to think how to, just some stuff that's kind of happened within my family that's just, some stuff kind of got, I think, kind of blown out of proportion and just upsetting and whatever. But it's just, I've still been in a funk. I was telling Heno, I don't remember if this was during the podcast or after, or before, or whenever it was we were talking. It's all a blur now. I told him how, and I know you know this, Jen, but like the number one trigger for my depression is money. Mm-hmm. Like, no question. Like, over the years, the quickest way to put me into a bad funk is for me to have issues with money. Like, when I feel hopeless financially, I immediately go into, a depressed state, and I've really been in a bad one. And even though I'm trying to move forward and all this other stuff, it's just still, there's still an element of, like, it's still so open-ended, even if I do file bankruptcy, even if whatever, it's like, I still don't have a down the road kind of, and by down the road, I'm not talking like 20 years. I'm talking like a year. Like I'm still kind of like, I still don't know what the hell I want to do with myself. Kind of a situation, so, but like I was telling Heno also is it was like the only way I'm going to get myself to where I kind of have to make that decision is to get this other out of the way. 'Cause this is an excuse. Mm-hmm. I don't have to decide what I want to do for whatever while this hovers over me, because this is more this needs to be dealt with, so. Yeah. So, and, one last thing is, for next episode, this week is going to be my first injection at home of my testosterone. So this Thursday will be the first day I do it myself. So we'll see how that goes. Again, as I said, from a guy who doesn't even like to really put eye drops in his own eyes.
See, you just need to get a family member all riled up at you and just hand them the needle and just say, there you go. Stab me.
No, that's all right. No, I'm good. So yeah, that's all I can think of. So I've talked long enough. Your turn, Heno.
Yeah. What's going on?
Let's see.
Good talk.
Yeah,
No.
that was good. Awesome. Talk to you guys later.
No. Get back here.
See you guys next week.
I have to talk like there's less Brian in the room.
Who?
Who? That guy.
Oh, yeah. Don't you know who I am?
Somebody hear a voice?
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't you know who I am? So I met with I've talked about this city council position that's come up, and I met with the mayor on Friday, and I had some. I was pretty much satisfied. There were a few things that I wish I'd said. You know, you always. This was a spontaneous interview where I had no agenda, so I was just. And I was okay with it. So I was going to walk in and just be myself and be comfortable. You know, and afterwards I thought of a couple things where I was like, you know, if I had a follow-up opportunity, I'd stress this or this, you know, kind of a thing. But evidently a lot of people had showed up for this to, you know, get onto town council. And the mayor was actually telling me that he was surprised by it. And I didn't even think about saying it is like, well, yeah, nobody wants to actually do the work that I did.
Yeah.
You know, like I wish I'd said that, because that would have been like, everyone wants a free shot at it. Like I put in time, I put in money, I put in a lot of energy. Mm-hmm. You know, I put a lot into this, and I was like, oh, I should have said that. That would have been like the perfect, you know, zinger in there. You know, and also just that was the main thing I wanted to stress was just that, you know, I've already put in a lot of effort into this, and if you want somebody that is already familiar with aspects of our city and blah blah blah, then, you know, I'm someone to consider. And I tried to have that type of level of confidence. And the one thing that the questions he had asked were like, what don't you like about our town? And I'm like, nothing. I wouldn't live here if there was something. I mean, I wouldn't have bought a house in this town if there was something, if there were things I didn't like about it.
Yeah.
You know, there's a reason that this has become my home, you know, and that I left my family in California. Was for this. So, and then, you know, just other things like, you know, what's your vision? And I'm like, don't make it worse. You know, like, I'm like, I don't have a vision. I want to keep doing what we're doing and not screw it up.
That's a really good first goal, though, is not make it worse, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was the other thing I wish I'd said is not screw it up, not make this worse. I see everything that we do is we do things right. Anyhow, where I'm getting at this is, you know, afterwards it was like, whoa, emotional hangover. I mean, I just forgot how much it's like I don't do job interviews. I've had literally, you know, less than if I include every job I've ever had in my life, and that includes like Paperboy, I've had less than 5 jobs.
Wow.
And I've never done a job interview for any of them.
Oh,
it was always a referral, or, I mean, I've done kind of some job. I mean, you always have an interview of some sort, but basically it's never been like I'm in competition for anything.
Yeah.
It's somebody needs a person. I'm there. We have a quick conversation and I'm hired, you know, and I've literally had 2 jobs in 26 years now.
Yeah.
Wow.
Right. That's rare. Right.
Yeah,
Yeah. So when I walked in, he's like, do you have a resume? And I'm like, no. The fact of the matter was, and this is the greatest feeling, was there is no better feeling than walking into a sale or an interview when you just don't really care.
Yeah. You're right. Yeah. That's why I said it's like buying a car. If you can walk in there not knowing you don't need to buy a car, that's the ultimate power, that you know at any time you can just turn around and just walk right out the door and just be like, whatever, you know? Yeah.
Yep.
Real quick, Henno, as I told you on Salty Language, I think when you told me or when we were talking, whatever, like when he said, do you have a resume? You should have pulled the old, just like, you know, look down at yourself and kind of been like, you see this?
Right here, buddy.
Yeah.
I'm Henno.
Yeah.
This isn't enough for you?
Right. I am the resume.
You know, and that was the thing that I think part of where I was reading, I was, you know, reading some things for our show, and I was looking at some motivational stuff. Mm-hmm. And a lot of it had to kind of reflect back on what we talked about last week about getting yourself out of a rut, or when you just feel like you're just in a plateau.
Yeah.
And so I was reading about it, and one of the things was confidence. Even if you don't have it, assume you have some confidence.
Yep.
And it'll help you get motivated. And I struggle all the time with this idea, like, I don't want to, because I taught, when I share about recovery or changes in my life that are positive, it's always very difficult. And we talked a little bit about shame last week, and this is where shame comes in, is I'm talking about myself, and I have worked really hard at trying to not come across as egotistical, but I have to talk about myself. Mm-hmm. And so I fall into this thing where I feel very insecure about, am I being too cocky, too confident? That's why I like the recurring joke of, don't you know who I am? Because it is my character defect. It really is.
Yeah.
And then trying to find that balance in life of, like I was reading this thing where it talked about, confidence is one of those things that you need when you don't even have it. But I've had, in my life, I've gone too far. I've been the wrong size for the situation.
Right.
And that's why, like, when I went, it was great to walk into this feeling like I did, because I had no anxiety. I had no fear. I was just going to be me, and it was going to be honest. It was going to be the truth. So when, do you have some grand vision for the town? It's like, no, I don't. Because I honestly don't. I don't feel like shaking things up or making things happen, because that's the part of me where I'm like, that's ego stuff. That's like, I want to get my name on the fact that I initiated something.
Right. And I've never liked people who do that in management, politics, any of that stuff. It's like, I'm more of the, like, and it's just a personal thing. Everybody's got their own style, but it's like, I'm more I like the type who walk in, survey the land, see what works, what doesn't work, what people like, what they don't like, then enact your change, rather than come in with this huge list of all these things you're going to change. And in the end, people are like, no, we don't want that change. That we were happy with that. And like you said, in the end, you're doing it just to get your name on something rather than doing what makes the people happy or what's best for the area or whatever it is, So,
and so that was the thing, was that I would rather go in and be myself and say, I'm willing here to just do a job rather than I'm the visionary. And if the mayor's looking for the visionary, then I'm not that person. Mm-hmm. And I'll be okay with that decision. Mm-hmm. But I'll tell you, the emotional hangover still I was unbelievable. Even though I had no anxiety, nothing like that, I went and had lunch across the street. I got to connect with some friends. And then by the time I got home, I had to take a nap. I fell asleep with the dog on me. I woke up just drooling. And it was just like, and I wasn't tired. It was just that emotional drainage from being on the spot.
Here's a question for you. Like, aside with the on the spot thing, and like you said, over the years, if anything, like you said, you feel as though you've leaned heavily, like, more toward ego than, like overconfident rather than underconfident. So do you think it's that because you've been leaning more toward like balanced, that maybe you were kind of leaning out of your comfort zone and that's why you had the hangover?
That's an interesting viewpoint.
Because in the past, this would have been home, but now it's not home anymore. You've kind of reined it back a little bit.
You know what? It's the insecurity then and the second guessing afterwards. Mm-hmm. That would be directly related to that. I could totally see that.
Yeah.
Because like if I go up on stage and perform as a musician, I know that role. Mm-hmm. I know my character. I know what I do. There's no excuses. There's no second guessing really. It's like, I know that person. But like, let's say if I was supposed to go up there and try to like, okay, don't be a Guitar Hero guy, right? Don't, don't get into your playing, don't be a showman.
Right.
Go up there and just stand quietly in the back and don't present myself to the audience,
Mm-hmm.
I would have an emotional hangover afterwards, probably because of what you just said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would second guess myself. Was that the right thing? And I'd probably be like, is that who I'm comfortable? Is that the skin I'm comfortable in?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. That's why I said, cause it's kind of like with me as I've worked on trying to get my confidence up, it's, there's elements now where I try to push myself into the, being, more outgoingly confident type of situation. And I have a hangover from that when I do it, because even though realistically, like in the end, I can see where it's like, well, hey, like basically no one called you out for being a faker or, like those kind of things. Like you can see that all the doubts were pushed aside kind of a thing. Like It was like, oh no, you actually weren't faking it, like you were that confident, you were all those things. But in the end, it's still kind of like, I still had to dial it up to get to there because my natural level would be like 8. And I'm like, you know what? Let's see if we can be a 9 or a 10 tonight,
Yeah. You know what? It's funny. That's a great point because that is usually when you have the hangovers is when you try to push yourself past where your comfort zone is.
Yeah.
But that doesn't say that the opposite can also be true is when you pull back, like there's still
restraining. I mean, picture if you're, like instead of, like you're doing a pull up, if you're just hanging there, that whole time instead of the pull up part of it, but you're just hanging there, you're just restrained your arms the whole time. You're going to get really tired, Yep.
Yeah, that's an interesting point.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing that happened this week, and I'm not going to get into details because it is personal, but because we've kind of talked about financials.
It's cool. Hit me up on Twitter. I'll tell you all the details. No, I'm kidding.
My own deal. I am still in the process of paying off my debt, and my goal was to do it without filing for bankruptcy.
Yeah.
And I have good months and bad months, and it goes up and it goes down depending on what's going on in my life and how much control I have, and if I'm retail therapying too much. And I've shared that a lot on here. But I still feel like I'm moving towards my goal. I'm being as financially responsible as I can, but I share a household. My wife also has had some financial difficulties, and it's not from it's just from jobs, and she hasn't. When you're working part-time jobs and trying to fill in with other, you have feast and famine kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so she wants to really look at it as well, which I love. But what's interesting is because we've never shared commingled our finances yet. We're still separate. We don't have joint checking accounts or anything like that. We divide things up however we do it. Mm-hmm. But the one thing that came up is because I've done a lot of work on it, I can look at it without emotion. I don't attach anything to it.
Yeah.
But she hasn't quite got to that point yet. Mm. And so sometimes feelings, can jump in.
Yeah.
And I realized that this is one of the most difficult things in the world when something that I might say might elicit feelings in somebody else, but I have to say it.
Yeah.
Because if I don't say something, I'm not honoring me, but I feel like, and it's unfortunate where it's this thing I learned a lot with codependency where it's like, I can't control other people's reactions.
Yeah.
I can't control if something to me is matter of fact and to somebody else it's an emotional hot button. Yeah. And I'm talking about, I'm just bringing up this as a general example in life about how difficult this is.
Yeah.
And we see it a lot with a lot of the political debates we've had lately where somebody talks from just a very matter of fact perspective, but somebody else has a personal connection to something. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And how those things there can be a conflict. And then, how do you the choices that you make from there. And so it was just a kind of an interesting thing that and I'll be completely truthful about this, I'm looking forward to this because I see this as a huge growth opportunity for us.
Sure.
You know, and everything ended up fine. You know, we just had this initial conversation, and I tried to express the fact that, you know, my intention is not to be harmful in any emotional way. I do need to honor myself, but that we're going to go towards this. We're going to find a solution to this.
Yeah. Well, you're also really,
no matter what happens.
Yeah. So you really are, even though it seems harsh or mean or whatever at the time, but you really are trying to honor her too, because you really are trying to, you know, help do what she wants you to do, which is help her move to where, you know, toward where you have already
We're both
done.
financially solvent.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And like you said, it is tough. It is tough sometimes, but sometimes you do just have to drop the hammer, you know?
Yeah, and it comes back down to something that we were talking about before the show too, is anytime that there's these growth opportunities where we have, you know, finally faced the truth and expressed the truth. And it was the touchstone towards growth, whether it was, you know, you, Brian, on that one Salty Language where you finally talked about your mental health.
Yeah.
That's a difficult moment, but it was the touchstone towards future growth. Right. And anytime that we, you know, the first time I got honest about my alcoholism, that was a really emotional, crappy day.
I'm sure it was.
Anytime, yeah. And so part of like 12-step programs, we have there's a self inventory. It's, you know, step 4 and step 5. And it's tough. It's tough to look back at your life where every place where you were selfish or self-centered, where you hurt other people. It's hard to make a list of all that. Writing it on paper, mine was page after page after page.
Yeah. Here's all the ways I'm a jerk. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And then we got to sex, you know?
Yeah.
It was like, you know, and then we got, you know, it was like I didn't even hit relationships and sex yet. It was just with friendships. And I got really depressed. And, you know, my sponsor at the time was great. He just said, let's take a break. Take a week off, enjoy yourself, do something. We can come back to it, because the whole point is I was not going to be able to grow until I did this inventory.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, every single thing I wrote down on paper was a judgment to me on myself. And that wasn't the point.
Yeah.
It wasn't about judging myself. It was about just taking stock of what has been, so I can make the changes for the future.
Right.
Because what happens is, you know, for those of you who have never, ever even really seen, you know, understood the purpose of a 12-step program, the inventory is step 4. Step 5 is talking about it. And then we get into these character defects and shortcomings, which is addressing some of those issues. And that leads us into the amends. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 are actually there. It's a process of getting from this is who I am. This is why I've done the things that I've done. Now I can maybe try to learn a new way of doing it. And here's the bonus. I get to work on clearing up that wreckage through the amends process.
Right.
And you know, you don't need to be in a 12-step program to utilize these steps. People do it all the time with their therapists in the same sort of way.
Yeah, I actually looked at that a little bit at one point for depression purposes. There's a lot of stuff in there that definitely can be applied for some of that too, because, you know, as we've talked, you know, really quick, going back to the episode you talked about where I first talked about my depression. If anyone wants to listen to that, it's Salty Language episode 47. You know, doing that kind of thing. Wow, I totally forgot where I was going with this. So using like the 12-step stuff toward like depression, because you don't realize, with mental illness, how much you hurt other people too. And you're not trying to, it's not really you, it's the, you know, illness or whatever, but it's still, they're still hurt, you know? And a lot of times those people don't know that it isn't you. They don't understand because they haven't gone through this. So they, you know, so some of these other things like the amends and different stuff, there's elements of that still could help mend friendships or whatever afterwards. So it's definitely not something that is a one-shot deal. Heno and I have had countless conversations on here as well as just privately about things that parallels between our situations that, where things have worked for both of us. So it's definitely not, again, the point of this podcast is basically throw everything at the wall and whatever works for you works for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sorry, Heno.
So boy, my story for the week did the usual, and I segued into a whole bunch of other stuff.
Which is awesome.
But that's what's on my mind. That's what's going on, But always, as always, super grateful to be looking for solutions.
Mm-hmm.
And finding the wins, and I love, I'm grateful for my relationship. I love my wife that we can get into a conversation that might not be so easy and end up saying, okay, you want to go shopping? Let's go get our groceries, and be fine and love each other and that kind of stuff. I'm so grateful for that in my life. And to have this show and my friends that I can talk about these things with, and to find ways that I can grow in the future. And, so, yeah.
Right on. Yep. I'm back at you. I'm definitely, very thankful about, having this show and you guys to, always, have for sounding boards or to come on here and just, again, like for the longest time, it was nice because this show really helped, especially when I couldn't go to therapy, because of my insurance. This show really saved me during those times because I was still struggling a lot. Now, like I've said, I kind of feel like therapy is a little adjustment more than it is anything for me. Like I go every so often and just get that little, get a quick tune up and then back on the path. I feel I'm getting more into that territory now. And, but the show still gives me that weekly check-in and that weekly, accountability and whatnot that we've always had for each other. So it's been a really good tool. And honestly, anyone out there listening, if you're looking for something like that and you don't want to do therapy as much as, I'm an advocate for therapy. I mean, there is this option as well, get some like-minded people they don't even have to be like-minded. They can be differing-minded, and, do a podcast talking about your situations.
And actually, I was just talking with someone about doing that. He was saying how him and his buddies get together every Sunday and sit around and chat, and he would love to have it recorded. And I'm like, and what's stopping you?
Yeah, there you have it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, get yourself an area mic. And I said, and contact me, said DM me through Twitter, and I'll be more than happy to walk you through what I know. And, there's tons of different resources online to kind of help you get started, but, do it. Don't worry about the numbers. Don't worry about who's listening.
Yeah.
If you want to have this recorded, if it's working for you, if it's helping you, do it, man. Just
really quick. If you are looking for any reason to start a podcast, contact Mark over at tangeaboutnetwork.com. He's,
that's great.
Really good about trying to help people get going. So,
Yep.
Anyways, let's get to our topic. What do we got?
Well,
nothing. All right.
I was going to say, I think Heno has it, right?
Are we going with mine?
Yep.
We're going with yours.
Boy, Heno, in the last 2 months, I think you've had almost all the topics, Heno.
I know.
Quite a few.
Been pretty heavy. It's been nice.
You've been taking it on, man.
Yeah. I like it.
So I'm going to jump into kind of what I already talked a little bit about tonight, and this is when things have to change, how to find the willpower to achieve your goals.
Nice.
And there's a quote from Confucius: "When it is obvious the goals cannot be reached, don't adjust the goals, adjust the action steps." Mm-hmm. And the author of this article, this is on Tiny Buddha, which is our really cool site. It really is a great place to find people that are blogging about self-help and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But he starts with, do you want to know my biggest fear? I've just come out of the closet. My parents have rejected me, and I am terrified. Really, really terrified. Because I'm completely alone, and the pain is unbearable. But it's not just the rejection that terrifies me, it's also what happens after that. With no one to turn to, I find comfort at the bottom of a bag of chips. 3 months and 30 pounds later, I've yet to leave the confines of my bedroom. I'm wasting away, haunted by dead dreams, dirty dishes, and empty soda cans. The depression is unbearable. I feel like I'll never be able to turn things around. I look in the mirror and don't recognize this person looking back at me, or resign myself to a life of sadness, solitude, and self-neglect. Feels as though everything is hopeless and I'll never amount to anything in life. Feelings of depression, lack of confidence, and fear of failure drive me to seek comfort with Aunt Jemima instead of with a new diet plan. This vicious cycle of depression and binge eating leads me to a state of paralysis and obesity. I've completely stopped taking care of myself. I feel like I may as well die because my life is over. Yikes, dramatic much? The secret is, not only is this one of my biggest fears, this actually happened. And that just grabbed me because it sounds like me, but I had alcohol.
Yeah.
Right. That's pretty heavy. That's, I would honestly say that's probably each one of our fears in their own way. Like you said, with you with alcohol, with me, it's my anxieties and my little headspace and getting lost up in there. It's just, I think every one of us has that major fear deep inside of us.
Yeah, and we see people in our lives that are in that same place too.
Mm-hmm.
It's inevitable when we start getting better that other people will reach out to us because they're curious, how did you do it?
Mm-hmm.
Or we're reaching out to people that we see in the same place. And I love the guy says, spoiler alert, eventually with therapy, I was able to break out of the depression, drop 30 pounds. Equally important, my parents have grown to love and accept my gayness, but that's not what this post is about. This post is about 5 strategies that help me crawl my way out of the hole and get back to a healthy place physically and emotionally.
Nice.
Which is really good. And now he's got great, the first one I loved is called strategy number 1, chunking. Yeah. And this is I bet you know what this is about. Can you think about it? We talk about it all the time. Chunking is when you take a large task and break it down into smaller, more manageable pieces.
That's what I was thinking it was.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. With chunking, you'll find you have increased confidence and willpower and are able to complete more tasks with less stress. We basically have unlimited willpower, but when presented with a momentous task, the brain becomes overwhelmed and says, no way, bring me more chips.
Yeah. I've already said it like multiple times this week. I hear it in my head all the time. If you can't do it 1 hour at a time, do it 1 minute at a time. Can't do 1 minute at a time. You do 60 seconds at a time, or 30 seconds at a time, or 1 second at a time, or whatever you need to do. You break it down and you keep breaking it down until you can handle it. And once you pass that first one, then you can move on to the next one.
Or even if it's not in time increments, like I mentioned, my therapist said to me a few weeks ago when I was there about like with driving. Is instead of like, I'm going to get in the car and drive 500 miles. Like, whoa. Like, how about let's get in the car and drive, 20 miles. Nope, still too much. I'm going to get in the car and drive around the block. Still too much. Okay. I'm going to start the car. Still too much. Okay. I'm going to sit in the driver's seat, like whatever it needs to be all the way back, So even that you can chunk it down however you need to until you get to a point that it's like, this I can handle, and then do the same thing with every step of the way. If whatever you feel the next step is, if it's too big, try to, cut it in half or whatever you need to do. And
celebrate each victory.
Exactly.
Yep. Doesn't matter how big or small. I mean, I don't know if we've said it recently, and I know we've said it a lot. It's celebrate those wins. Yep. Claim them. Put your flag on it. Say this one's
Own
mine.
it.
That's right.
Did it.
Yep.
Be proud.
Eat 3 bags of chips for every time you have a victory. Wait.
Yep.
No.
I don't think that's it.
Yeah.
But he goes on with something that we've talked about a lot. It's the paralysis of analysis. And it's like looking at that big, huge, going to the gym and the giant workout and then, your depression fighting you all along the way and being in a negative emotional state, and then focusing on how long and tiring everything is. And then inadequacy, creeps in, not measuring up. And then all of a sudden you're exhausted just thinking about it. And the next thing you know, you've plopped your butt down on the couch and you're preparing for another long Netflix binge with a side of chips.
You know what's funny? That is one thing, like when I used to go to the gym with my brother, that is one thing I never had an issue with. Like once I was at the gym, like, cause you know how like they have in most of the like, chain gyms, they have, trainers, air quote, trainers. And, they'd give you like, oh, you're fat and you want to lose weight. Here's your workout routine, basically, and I'd look at the list and I very rarely would be like, whoa, most of the time I'd be like, okay, and just get after it. Like I'd be like this first thing, second thing, because it was a to-do list to me. It wasn't, I think it almost would have been worse, like if the trainer or something had been standing there and be like, okay, we're going to start over here, then do this, then do this, then do that, like pointing at the machines.
Yeah.
But because they gave me a list like I said, it was a to-do list, and I just crossed each one off when I was done with it. I don't know why that never seemed to bother me. It never seemed daunting to me. Like every time I went with him, I'd burn through that thing and be like, okay, done,
But I think here's the thing. So weird. You managed to get a few chunks out of the way, and one of them is you got the clothes on.
Yeah.
True.
Right?
Yeah, true enough.
And that was one of the things.
Well, if you handed me the same workout at home, I'd probably end up on the couch.
Yeah, exactly. That's my point. Yeah.
So you're right.
Right? And so the doing what's the next move right now in this moment, and he talks about this in another, more specifically in one that's directed at working out. And it was the idea of put your workout clothes on.
Yeah.
But once you have those on, you're more likely to get out the door.
I guess that makes sense because that really and truly is, I've always been a person that if you come over, you will rarely catch me in pajamas or my sleep clothes. When I get out of bed, I get dressed. Like I put on jeans and a t-shirt or shorts and a shirt or whatever. Like I'm not in sleep clothes anymore.
Yeah.
I don't have lounge around the house clothes. Like you will never find me in sweatpants. Like I don't even own a pair of sweatpants because I hate them. But, like you won't find me in that kind of attire, like.
That's a big tip.
Exactly.
That's a huge tip.
And I know that's part of the reason is because, well, I'm not going to go into the reason behind it, but, it's, I have reasons for it. And a lot of it is so that I can, again, it removes the excuse. That was always really the reason. It removes the excuse so that if I want to go, there's never I'm not ready. It's, let's go. Yeah, I just got to put my shoes on basically. Let's go. So,
yeah,
that is a strong point.
And that is something that I've also been reading about lately too, is that idea of like, get up and put your clothes on. There's a reason why we have a morning routine that we put certain clothes on. We make our coffee. We make and every single one of those is a little chunk that gets us out the door to the job, to work, to whatever it is that we're doing that day, volunteering. It doesn't matter what it is. But the point being is that we have created habits. It's a combination of little chunks that help us get to what we're supposed to do, even though on a Monday morning, it's the last thing we want to do.
Right.
Right.
Makes sense.
Right?
Yeah.
It's a step forward.
Yep.
Exactly. So, strategy number 2 is confidence. And, I already talked about this. Confidence is the belief you have in yourself to achieve your goals. And the author says, after coming out to my parents and feeling alone and abandoned, my confidence was basically non-existent. I needed to get my confidence back if I was going to be successful. Approaching a task with confidence will decrease the willpower required to complete said task, and feelings of self-doubt and insecurity will begin to melt away. And but this is one of these great topics. Okay. And he asks the question that is the question that is currently being begged of us. How is it possible to increase confidence, you ask? You know, because it's like, okay, that sounds great.
Yeah. Easier said.
How?
Yeah.
Right. Well, now we get back to another wonderful, there you go. Simple solutions for building self-esteem.
My therapist actually recommended a book called 10 Simple Solutions for Building Self-Esteem. If anyone wants to read it, it's by Glenn R. Schiraldi, PhD. You can find it on Amazon for probably, I think I bought my copy for like $3. So, yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah. There's a whole bunch of these, by the way, too. Anyway, sorry.
So the author talks about something we've talked about many times on this program, and that is reframing. How are you framing your goals? He says, when I wanted to lose 30 pounds, for example, I felt an extreme lack of confidence pursuing such an ambitious goal. Feelings of inadequacy and self-doubt became debilitating. I felt like I was permanently stuck in a place of inaction, never to achieve my goals. The truth is, the way I was framing my goal was setting me up for failure. And again, he used chunking to break his goal down into something that was easy, manageable, and achievable. And instead of focusing on losing 30 pounds, you shifted to just losing 1 pound.
Yeah.
Start paying attention to small wins, small milestones. Again, something we talk about every single week.
And this makes a ton of sense because it's so much like there's a lot of people that once they get past that first 10 to 15 pounds, hit that kind of initial plateau, and then that becomes their give up point. You know, because you struggle for a little bit and then you're like, meh, and you just go back to, you know, so if you, like you said, if you go 1 pound or 5 pounds, something like that, you know, or even 10, whatever your number ends up being, and you hit that and go, okay, well now I'm going to go another 5 or, you know, so yeah.
Yep. If your thing isn't weight loss and it's about, you know, mental health, getting to a therapist, you know, and you're thinking about, I'm going to go through all this therapy. Think about just a phone call.
Yeah.
If you have a drug and alcohol problem, think about making a phone call. Start with a phone call.
Yeah, because so many people look at
somebody.
Yeah, so many people look at therapy as like, wow, you know, if I start, I'll be going forever, and it's like, you don't know that. Like therapy only lasts as long as you need it. You know, as long as you feel you need it, and any good therapist will tell you that. You know.
Yep.
Go ahead, Jen.
One of my favorite sayings is, I've got quite a few, but one of my favorite sayings is perception is 9/10 of a situation. If you can't change the situation, you change the perception.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, it's how you look at things. You can control that. It's not easy. It's not natural. It won't feel comfortable, but you can change how you see things. I mean, Brian is a perfect example of that.
Yep.
You know, if you follow him and his journey, you can absolutely see how changing the way you look at things and how you think about things, it will work.
Well, realistically, if you look at where my life is a year ago and where my life is now, essentially I'm living basically the same life. Right? But if you look at my outlook, you wouldn't know I'm living the same life. And that's like you said, that's the difference is, like I told Henno the other night, I'm like, I'm happier than I've been in a long time because I've changed the way I'm looking at the world, the things I'm holding on to for dear life, the things that I try to control, you know, like all those little things, you know, and that's made a huge difference for me.
Yeah, it's like most of us that are making changes in our lives eventually realize that the world hasn't, like, it's not like the world changed around us. It was our perception of the world that changed. We just put on a new pair of glasses.
Yeah, really.
And saw it differently.
Yeah,
right?
it really is. Yeah.
And speaking of strategy number 3, guess what it is?
Putting on a new pair of glasses?
Perception.
Oh.
Perception.
Perception is everything when it comes to maintaining willpower.
Yeah.
It will make or break your chances for success. A recent study conducted by Stanford University found that if you believe you have unlimited willpower, you will in turn have more willpower than the average person. This means that when you believe you have a finite supply of willpower, you're right. When you believe you have an infinite supply of willpower, you're right about that too. You create your own reality. And I think that is such a powerful statement right there, right? Because it's something that is in one of my readings that I love, and it says, I am the master of my reality. Mm-hmm. The perception of the world around me is up to me.
Yeah.
If everything is crappy and nothing is good and there's no point, that's my perception. That's what I'm bringing to the table. I also have learned that I have the choice to turn that around now. And it doesn't mean that I'm, freaking rose-colored glasses all the time, like, oh, the world is beautiful and blah, blah, blah. But I'll tell you what, I'm a lot more happy-ish about everything that happens. My glass is a lot more half full than it used to be not because the world changed around me, but because I've chosen to see it that way.
Right.
And that takes a lot of strength because especially in today's climate, our society does not necessarily reward the positive of things. We have a tendency to go negative. We have a tendency to focus on the negative and to tear apart anyone who brings that positivity to it. I mean, we all make jokes about the uber optimistic person. It's easy. They're a target. But what people don't take into account is how hard that person works to be the positive person. That's not a natural state. A natural state is for us to kind of, poo-poo that and not want to put ourselves out there as being as being the positive one. But it is a choice. It's a choice that, I have chosen to make every single day I wake up. I choose to be look on the positive side of things, and I choose to stand up against the negativity. And you have to make those active choices, but you can do it.
Yep.
You gotta do it.
The best part about it is this is about how awesome is it that we get to have control over something. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's why I love these concepts, because people right away just, I can't. I'm like, how often in life do you get to have control of something? You get to control this. Yeah. This is your control. Nobody can take it away from you. Mm-hmm. If somebody takes it away from you, that was your choice.
You gave it away. Yeah.
You gave it away. Exactly. And yes, there are a lot of tools that are required. And some people are naturally like this, but I'll speak for myself. I didn't have these tools.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know how to not let people get to me. I didn't know how to not play the victim. Mm-hmm. I didn't know. I allowed the world around me to dictate my insides. I let other people's outsides dictate my insides. And by using therapy, meditation, which is mentioned here, mm-hmm. There are lots of different ways that someone can achieve these things, whether it's self-hypnosis or cognitive therapies or a multitude of ways of finding a way that you can feel that, and it's a level of learning to have some confidence and to let that stuff brush by you, which is it's a scary thing to do.
Yeah.
Is to sit there and say, you know what, I know that especially at work, I know my coworker's in a really bad mood, and I'm not going to let it get to me.
Yeah,
that is not easy.
Right.
It is not, because we're faced with it all day long. Mm-hmm. Or my spouse, my cohabitation human is in a bad place.
Yeah.
And it has nothing to do with me. That is their thing. I'm not going to let it get to me. I don't need to fix them.
Yeah.
And these are all parts of those tools of perception. And they're like, for me, it was not easy. I had to do a lot of training.
It was, exactly. And that's the thing is, like, even with me, it's like I can see where I was to where I am, and I can see that I still feel like in various areas, I feel like I have a lot of work. In other areas, I feel like I don't have as much, but I still have work to do, cause you know how it is. It's like you just never feel that you're perfect because I don't buy into that anyway, but, it's going way back to the other thing. It's interesting how the more and more I've been reading lately, it's, the placebo effect has been around forever, just for so long now. And it's amazing how much, is being kind of proven that our brain is so powerful with that effect.
Yeah.
There are so many medicines that research is kind of showing that the placebo effect works almost as well as the medicines. It's just a matter of, like stuff like a great one is like melatonin. There's all this science out there that, tons of people swear by melatonin because since they've started taking it, they sleep better.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But there's a bunch of science that basically goes, there's not really much here that shows it does a lot. Like it might help a little, but if it works, it works. Like if it works for you, don't stop because, sleep is so important that it's worth it kind of a thing,
Essential oil, same way.
Essential oils. Yeah. I told Jen about that. I listened to a podcast talking about those, about how basically most of them are scientifically bunk, but they smell good. They aren't really harmful aside from you can make arguments about anything that has a fragrance removes oxygen from the air and, you can make arguments about that, but essentially they're harmless, so who cares? If they relax you, they smell nice, whatever. If you feel they work, they work. Again, same idea with a lot of this stuff. So it's like, so why fight it, And, but there's other medicines and stuff over the years that, look how many people, all of us know people who don't take aspirin. They get a headache and they basically just, I'm not going to take aspirin, or they get aches and pains. They just refuse to take it, and then there's other people who every little ache and pain they have to take something and they swear by it. And it's, again, it just makes you wonder, how much of that is the brain, the process of, the drag of a cigarette versus what it truly does to you versus, just the motion. Our brains are just powerful things. If we imagine that something works, it probably just works because our brain says it works. It tells the rest of our body it works and releases chemicals that do things, But anyway, it always reminded me of, there's a quote that gets thrown around in football a ton. That's the whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right.
That's great.
And that's a great perception one, cause
that really is about being the master of your own reality.
Right. And again, that's very much like I said, it's kind of a placebo effect. And it goes back to like, when you're a little kid and your parents tell you can do anything. Well, if you think you can do anything, your chances of doing whatever it is you truly want to do, you can't tell me that they don't significantly increase.
Yeah.
If you feel from minute one that you are extremely limited by what you can do, you're probably not going to go after as much in life. Now, there are going to be the exceptions that are like, well, I'll show you.
Yeah.
But most people are probably going to be like, oh, well, I can't be that person, or I can't do this, or, so that mentality, again, it's just, just the open-mindedness and the positive outlook. And it's like, if you listen, again, I'll bring up, I know when I talked about this on Salty Language, but Tim Ferriss, if you listen to most of the people he has on his show, when he talks to them, you rarely hear any of them have a can't mentality. Almost all of them have well, I know no one's ever done that before, but I was like, you know what? Why not me? Like kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And that's why they end up being Richard Branson and just do whatever they want to do in life, basically, because, or they end up being like Elon Musk, or just these people that just are kind of like weird outside the box thinkers because they just don't let things stop them,
One of the things that we talked about on Salty Language this week also was this Chris Jericho show with Paul Stanley, and I listened to it today, and the one piece of advice that Paul Stanley had that I guess he wrote in Jericho's book in the foreword, which is the people that would discourage you from doing something in your life are already failures. And the point being is that people that are successful will never discourage you.
Right?
They will always encourage you to do stuff. And if somebody ever tells you, no, I don't think you should do that, they've already failed.
It reminds you of like when we've talked on here about like who to keep around you as your friends. Like when you're like, hey, something great happened to me. It's like, how do they react? Are they the, you know, oh, lucky you? Or are they the, oh, that's awesome? You know?
Exactly. Yeah. And it really was like, wow, that is so true. Like,
I like it.
Anytime you hear a successful human, they're going to encourage you to go for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, successful humans are generally not afraid of other successful humans. That's, you know, versus, I mean, don't get me wrong, there are plenty that are, but you know what I'm saying? It's like, like I said, listening to Tim Ferriss, when he says something to someone about, hey, I had this idea, a lot of times they will kind of give him a little feedback or something to that effect, but I've rarely heard one go, that's a terrible idea.
Yep.
You know, every once in a while, one of them will, because he's just kind of throwing stuff at a wall or something, or the other will, and he'll be like, I don't think that'll ever work, you know, and most of the time that's because they've already talked it out. Like, they'll go, yeah, that's why I didn't start it, you know. Mm-hmm. It'll already be an idea they've considered, like, and, you know, done due diligence on, and they'll be like, yeah, there was one time I was gonna this, and he'll go, oh, I can't imagine if you had tried that, you know, like those kind of things. But that's it, and it's just never that, like, heavy, you know, like, wow, you're dumb, you know, like kind of overtone, you know. So,
well, one of my favorite authors of all time, and I highly recommend go out there, listen to his lectures, read his books.
Dr. Seuss?
Leo Buscaglia.
Oh.
Yes, Dr. Seuss. But no. Leo Buscaglia. And that's Leo, L-E-O, and then Buscaglia, B-U-S-C-A-G-L-I-A. And he was a professor, and he actually wrote the book entitled Love. He's got the copyright on love, he used to say, because he's no longer with us. But one of his quotes, I still get wildly enthusiastic about little things. I play with the leaves. I skip down the street and I run against the wind. You know, and that's in a nutshell who he is. Like I could go on and on and on about singing the praises of this guy. He is just amazing. One of his other famous quotes is, only the weak are cruel. Gentleness can only be expected from the strong.
Right, because they're not afraid. That's the difference. Yeah. Yep. The people who are cruel to each other are trying to keep themselves elevated. Yeah.
Misery loves company.
Yep.
So
his love.
Our first strategy is identity, which kind of ties into a lot about this, because it really is about, you know, one of the classics, a victim identity. Mm-hmm. Are you a victim of circumstances, or are you accepting full responsibility for a situation? How are you identifying yourself? Are you, do you call yourself a fat, lazy slob who will never amount to anything? You know, that you're immediately identifying yourself, and that shapes your ability to get past that. And so many of these things are also beliefs. These could be long-term beliefs. But we constantly use our identity to quickly recognize the things we are good at and the things we suck at. Mm-hmm. And the minute we do that, we limit our potential, because they will hold you back.
Mm-hmm. That also sets you up for a reason to fail.
Yep.
If you say I'm a fat, lazy slob, and you don't succeed at a 5K or something, or a 10K or whatever the fuck they are, the races, you know, like if you don't succeed at one of those runs, you go, well, I am fat, you know, like you've already set that out there ahead of time. You know, you put that little, bug out there so later you can refer back to it.
Yeah. And the question again is, how the heck do I change my identity? Well, you can start by changing the stories that you tell yourself. Flip the script.
Mm-hmm.
And our author used the example of trying to quit smoking for the 10th time. When he had a bad craving, he would tell himself, I'm not allowed to smoke. And if you notice the language he was using was, I'm not allowed.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And that is of someone who identifies as a smoker.
Mm-hmm.
He has identified himself as a smoker, and I'm not allowed to smoke. And setting up a sense of deprivation and giving away the power to the identity of being a smoker. And he says that by changing the story from I'm not allowed to smoke to I do not smoke, he decreased the feelings of deprivation, and it also empowered him to create a new identity of someone who doesn't smoke.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very subtle, but I get it. This idea of, you say, as soon as you have that negative thing, and you also make yourself that person, I'm not, in my case, I'm not allowed to drink.
Mm-hmm.
And that is always typical with anybody that has gone a little too far, and some loved one has requested that they cut back a little bit.
Yeah.
And what's they do? They play the victim, and they say, well, I'm not allowed to have more than 2 beers.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not allowed to drink.
Yeah.
You have set yourself up as a drinker.
Yep.
Rather
Come
than
on.
just
One more
saying-
won't hurt you. Yeah.
And I can see this applying to so many different things in life. And this is, again, a part about reframing, but it really comes from what's your motive? Are you coming from the place of a victim,
Mm-hmm.
or someone that has accepted full responsibility?
Well, and I
think that's a great tip.
I mean, I was kind of joking there, but it really does set you up that way, though, too. Think about it. You're at the bar with a friend, and they go, hey, let me buy you a beer. And you go, oh, so-and-so, doesn't want me drinking, or I can't drink tonight, whatever. And they go, come on, one won't hurt you. Come on, one won't hurt you. If you go, I don't drink, they may still do something similar, but they'll probably let it go sooner because you say, I don't drink.
Yeah.
So
I'm not drinking tonight.
Right. That's a firmer, for most people, that's a firmer no. If I'm out at a bar with somebody and I go, hey, let me buy you a drink, and they go, I don't drink, boom, shut down in my head. You know what I mean? Like, that's a firm no,
Yep.
versus I'm not drinking tonight. Be like, come on, have one, like, I don't want to drink by myself, like, people will go into those.
Yep.
So I think, because not only are you setting yourself up as a victim, but I think you by doing that, then that also allows you, it sets you up twice as the victim, because then once you've had that beer and gone home, you could be like, you'd be like, like Brian talked, like, how he is. I couldn't resist. He bought me one. I wasn't gonna, yeah.
So true.
Yeah.
So true.
Mm-hmm. So the other way is just much better. If you're really trying not to smoke, drink, whatever whatever it is you're trying not to do. But you're right. That I hadn't thought about that until you said that. That is a much better way of framing that, though. Because like with diets and stuff, it was like, that's why so many people have such an issue with diets, is just that flat no doesn't work for so many people. Like, oh, I can't have cake. And then every time you see a cake, you're like, man, I want some cake. And it's like, just have a small piece of cake. It's okay. Or if you're just say, I don't eat sugar anymore, or something like that. I'd rather, like when I ask some people, whatever, like they'll say something about that, and I'll be like, what do you mean, whatever? And they'll go, oh, I don't eat sugar anymore. I'll be like, oh, okay. And I let it go. You know what I mean? Or I'll make some comment that they've heard a million times, like, you're crazy. I'll eat all the cake for you. But, you know what I mean? Like, versus, oh, I'm just not having dessert tonight. Then it goes back into the, come on.
Yeah.
So I guess maybe I should stop being a jerk trying to talk people into stuff. Maybe that's the lesson we're learning here tonight. Jeez.
Way to go, instigator.
I'm terrible. Yeah. I'm ruining families.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Our last strategy is high-level thinking. We essentially have two types of thinking, high level and low level. Low level thoughts focus on how to complete a task, short-term goals, and execution of plans. Like, how am I going to work out today is an example of a low level thought. High level thoughts focus on why you want to complete a task and are charged with a sense of meaning and purpose. They help us to find that extra bit of willpower we need to carry us through tough times. Why do I want to work out today is an example of a high level thought. And speaking of Tim Ferriss, when I was listening to the Arnold Schwarzenegger interview, he talks a lot about this, and he talks about this on a lot of the anytime that he does interviews or podcasts or things like that, and he talks about his how he got to be where he's at, whether it's movies or politics or blah blah blah. And he refers back to a lot of bodybuilding, obviously. Mm-hmm. And he was using higher level of thought because he was looking at the big picture of what his goal was of winning Mr. Olympia, mm-hmm. right? He wasn't thinking about how am I going to get up this next rep?
Yeah.
How am I going to push up this extra 5 pounds?
Yeah.
How am I going to talk my body into doing this? No, he was thinking about I'm going to lift up these weights because I'm going to the Mr. Olympia contest.
And he was thinking about how am I going to win mentally before I even pick up one of these weights? Like, how am I going to essentially psych out my opponents without even lifting a weight? You know?
Yeah. He was thinking about psyching out his muscles first.
Yeah. This guy, that's why I said if people out there have never listened to any of his interviews, like, grab the Tim Ferriss interviews with him. There's some fine interviews, and there's some really, like, he talks about his sleep patterns, which are really interesting to listen to, and just all the things about what have made him successful in life. And I mean, you can't, whether you like put his politics aside if you don't agree or whatever with him, just look at the fact of what he's done, you know, with his life. He's succeeded at everything he's done, basically.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know, at a high level, you know.
And that's truly, you will hear the difference between low level thought and high level thought. Now, the one kind of interesting thing about this concept is it kind of goes against chunking in that we are now looking at a bigger picture. Mm-hmm. But the point is not to get so caught up in mundane thoughts mm-hmm. and those little things. You know, this is not about like thinking, okay, I'm going to lift one weight at a time. That's not chunking. Chunking is the idea of still having like a higher level thought, meaning I'm putting my workout clothes on, or I'm getting in the car and I'm going to my therapy meeting or whatever it is like that. Mm. It's not about all the little steps, because when we get into those little steps, that's when all of a sudden things become arduous sounding.
Yeah.
And all of is to think about what your goals are, what the bigger picture is versus what you have to do to achieve it. Because that becomes that big burdensome picture that we're trying to avoid with step one and chunking and victim. And, you know, because then we're like, oh, look what I have to do to, you know, and we're slipping back.
Well, I honestly think you can kind of do both at the same time. Have you ever seen like if you go to like a bookstore, and you look at like the anatomy books there, especially more like ones for artists, they generally have overlays in them for like the body, right? Mm-hmm. Like one will be like the outside of the body, you know, and then that'll be like the bottom one. And then the next overlay will show like the muscular system. Then, you'll see. Okay. Well, I think you can kind of do the same thing with the larger thinking and the chunking in that kind of thing. And that your large goals go on the bottom so that you always see them. But the chunking is your, however you want to look at it, your skeletal system, your muscular system, however you need to break it down, so that you can still see it, but it's broken down into smaller pieces so that you can still see, or like a game board, you can see from the beginning of the game where the end of the board is, but you also understand that you have to move all the way to the end, So the bigger goals are more like you look at those occasionally, The chunking is the one you're looking at every day or every time you need to look at it to keep moving. Because I think I've always felt like it's good to have both goals moving at the same time, kind of.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Because eventually you are going to hit your bigger goal by chunking, and then, obviously, if you keep them both moving, then you can just keep, or whatever. You can just keep, move as you achieve, however you want to look at that, but.
And like he uses a great example about just like a craving for a food, and it was about putting cream in coffee.
Yeah.
But he was going on intermittent fast about, okay, no cream, until after 4 p.m. or whatever. And like I said, the struggle got real. I was ready to give in and make that coffee creamy and delicious. I didn't care how wrong it was because it felt so right.
I know, he made it so salacious. Yeah.
I know. Suddenly, as I was about to pour the cream, I started thinking at a higher level. I realized this cream would stop me from progressing forward toward my larger goal of being fit and healthy and inspiring others. After thinking at a higher level, the cream became much less tempting, and I was able to put the cream down. And this is starting to sound like a euphemism in my head, and I need to shut up right now.
Meanwhile, as you're reading that, like in my head, I'm going, just have the cream, dude. Like, just maybe don't have as much. Just put a little taste in there.
So in conclusion, these 5 strategies, chunking, confidence, perception, identity, and high-level thinking, are all tools that we can add to the toolbox. And we will have a link to this article for you in the show notes.
Yep.
Woohoo!
Yep,
There
just
you
put
have
it
it.
in there.
But just want to say, Timothy James, that was our author. Timothy is a health and wellness coach specializing in weight loss and lean muscle gain. And you can get it when you go to the link for this article. He has a link to receive his free self-care guides if you are interested.
Very nice.
Fun.
All right, guys. Well, I don't know. How are we doing? We good?
Yeah?
Yeah, I think
so.
my toolbox is overflowing.
I know, right?
That feels like a euphemism, too. But so we should get out of here before we keep making euphemisms.
Probably. Well, with that, folks, you know what to do if you want to continue the conversation.
Yeah, you do.
Nailed it.
If you want to continue the conversation, you can reach out to us.
Yeah, you can.
At the Crazy Life Podcast at Outlook.com for emails, the Crazy Life Podcast.weebly.com for our website. You can also reach us through different links on there. You can reach me on Twitter at Jen's Crazy Life, and that's Jen with the G. I'm also Ditz with the Tits. This is my alt account. And my other podcast is Shake the Sheets. And it's shakesthesheets.com, has all the links and all that good stuff. I think that's it. And Henno, how about you?
You can find me on Twitter at Ida Henno. Find me on Facebook, Henno Heiter. And if you go check out, as of this release, the Orvalites podcast, you can hear the 3rd installation of the Agnes Rain erotic trilogy.
Awesome. And you, Brian, how can they reach you?
You can find, you can also find this show on Twitter at the Crazy Life Pod, where I post when the new episodes go up. You can find me on Twitter at Stunami. You can find the other podcast I'm on, or, that Henno co-hosted with me this past week, at salty_language or at saltylanguage.com. Much like the one Henno just talked about. Not safe for work.
Yes.
And you can find our Facebook group over at facebook.com/group/crazylifepodcast. We're part of the previously mentioned Tangent Bound Network, which can be found at tangentboundnetwork.com. Again, if you're looking to start a podcast, Mark is great for helping out upstarts over there, so contact him. Or just go check out that site for other podcasts that you may be interested in. If you have the time, we would appreciate it if you would rate, review, and subscribe. if you haven't already, or just please share our podcast with a friend or anybody that you think would get something from the show. It'd mean a lot to us. And there was something else I was going to mention here, and I can't remember what it is now. And now I'm sad. Boo-hoo. Boo-hoo. Oh, boo. Wow, I really can't remember what it was, and I was going to... Oh, if anybody listening is interested in getting a drawing of themselves as, like a Lego person or a Funko Pop of themselves, I'm trying to raise some cash for my other podcast or for myself, whichever. If you would like to donate anything over $5, get something. The more you donate, the more detail that I'll put into it. And you can donate at our, the Salty Language Patreon, which can be found at patreon.com/saltylanguage. And I would greatly appreciate it. If not, no big deal. I know nobody loves me. It's cool, but whatever. And then, of course, if you feel as though you need help, as we've pointed out different times in here, please reach out to somebody, whether it's a friend, a crisis hotline number, talk to your doctor, a therapist. Just please don't be alone if you're having a mental health crisis. There's all sorts of help out there, so please reach out. And also, please reach out to the people that are always telling you that they're fine. Talk to somebody you haven't talked to in a long time. Just ask them how they're doing. Tell them you love them. Tell them you care, whatever. Just, don't just reach out to the people that, you think are struggling. Reach out to the ones that might be too quiet to say something. 'Cause they may need the help just as much or worse. Yeah. And then, as I've been saying the last few weeks too, it's just, try to do something nice for somebody. Just put some good out there for somebody else.
Absolutely. That's the best way to do it is spread the happiness, even if you may not feel it all the time. Mm-hmm. When you do feel it, just that happiness around. So with that, folks, have a great week and wiggle your toes.